A cold case from the 1950s has finally been put to rest following new scientific evidence. Back in October of 1959, the skeletal remains of a child were found in the city of Mequon. After conducting a years-long investigation, officials connected the remains to a missing child case. The parents of Marco Jutila were arrested in March of 1966, but the charges were later dismissed due to a lack of evidence, despite the mother confessing to physically beating her son to death. 58 years later, in September of 2024, the remains were identified as those of Marco, whose birth name was Chester Alfred Briney. Chester was adopted by Russell and Hilda Jutila in the March of 1955, and further examination found that he suffered neglect, which led to infection, bleeding, and a fractured rib. Both of the adoptive parents died in 1988, meaning that there will be no further prosecution in the case. Chester also has no living blood relatives. He is set to be officially laid to rest at St. Mary's Parish Cemetery on November 15th.